Hello and welcome. In this video segment we'll create the geometry for Tutorial 3 Exercise 2. The drawing for this exercise is at the end of Tutorial 3. On the screen is the completed geometry. Shortly I'll create a new part and start at the beginning, but before we do that let's review the geometry on the screen. Over on the right hand side at the center of this grid is X0, Y0. The first step will be to create the two 1/2-inch diameter circles. The center point for the circle on the right is X0, Y0. At the center of the left 1/2-inch circle, it's X minus 3.5 and the Y value at the center is 0. After this, we'll create the two circles that have a radius of 5/8, and these circles share the same center points as the 1/2-inch circles. Now moving up to the top of the drawing, we have an arc that has a radius of 0.5. Now when we create this arc, we're going to use polar coordinates to identify the center of this arc. We have an angle 120 degrees that we're going to use, and sliding over to the left we have a radius 2.215, which represents this center line that passes through the center of this arc. So we have a length and we also have an angle. Now at the center of this 1/2-inch circle is another arc that has a radius of 1/8, and also down below we have another arc that has a radius of 1/8. When we create this arc, we're also going to use polar coordinates for the center point. We have a length, this radius 2.215, and also an angle 120 plus 40. Now moving up to the top, the arc that I'm identifying right now, we don't have a radius for this arc on the drawing, but we do know it's tangent to a couple of entities. The 1/2-inch arc at the top, and just down below this arc that has a radius of 1.483. Now this arc, this 1.483 arc, we're not quite sure where the center point is, but we do know it's tangent to this arc and also tangent to the 5/8 arc on the left hand side. Now the slot, the arc that I'm pointing to right now, again we're not quite sure about the radius, but we do know it's tangent to this arc and this arc. Likewise, this arc is tangent to two entities, this arc and this arc. And now just sliding down below, again this arc, we're not quite sure what the radius is, but we do know it's tangent to the 1/2-inch arc, and then just down below it's tangent to this arc that has a radius of 0.25. Now we also have a couple of lines to create. This horizontal line at the bottom is tangent to this arc, and it's tangent to this arc on the right hand side. And just above we have our last horizontal line that's tangent to this arc. So without any further ado, let's move up to the top left hand corner and click on the icon for new part. The first thing that I'm going to do is create the two 1/2-inch diameter circles. I'm going to move into create arc, and then second on the list, create circle center point. Now moving up to the ribbon bar, the first thing I'm going to do is set up the diameter. I'm going to click in the white space and input 0.5, enter, and I'm also going to click on the diameter icon. As you can see, they've turned red. I've locked these values in. So here's my first prompt, enter the center point. Now I'm going to move on down to the center of the grid. This first circle, the center point is X0, Y0, and on the screen is a visual cue that I'm going to snap to the origin, X0, Y0. So I'm going to pick it, looks good. I'm going to move up to the ribbon bar and hit on apply. Now the next circle over on the left, if you look at the drawing, the distance between centers is 3.5. So what I'm going to do is move up to the order cursor ribbon bar and click on fast point. I'm going to input the center point x and y values. So for the x, minus 3.5, comma, and the y value is at 0. I'm going to hit enter, and there's the circle. I'm going to hit apply on the ribbon bar. Now the next arcs have a radius of 5/8. So up on the ribbon bar, I'm going to click in the space for radius and type in 5/8 and then hit enter, 0.625. Now I'm prompted enter the center point. Well, over on the left hand side, I'm going to move to the center of this circle, and there's my visual cue that I'm going to snap to the center of this circle. I'm going to pick it. I'm going to slide over to the right, and there's my visual cue that I'm going to snap to the center. I'm going to pick it and then move up and click on apply. So we've got our first 4 circles. The next thing I'm going to do is to create the 1/2 inch radius circle up on the top. So let's go up, and in the radius section I'm going to click on this icon to deactivate the locking feature, and in the white space for radius I'm going to input 1/2 and then hit enter, 0.5. Now the center point of this circle, we're going to use polar coordinates. So what I'm going to do is, when prompted for the center point, I'm going to move up to the order cursor ribbon bar, open up this drop down, and then right at the very bottom here we've got relative. I'm going to click on relative. The prompt has changed. Enter a known point or change to a long mode. Well, I want to enter a known point, so what I'm going to do is move on down. There's my visual cue that I'm going to snap to the center of this arc. I'm going to pick it. Now the prompt has changed again. Enter rectangular or polar coordinates. Well, I want to use polar coordinates. So up on the ribbon bar, I'm going to click in the white space for distance. Now on my drawing I've got a radius 2.215, so I'm going to input 2.215 and then hit the tab key on my keyboard, and now I'm transported over into the angle section, and I'm going to type in 120 degrees and hit enter, and there's my circle. I'm going to hit apply. Looks good. The next thing that we're going to create are a couple of circles that have a radius of 1/8. So first thing, let's move on up. I'm going to click on this icon to lock the value in, and now for the radius I'm going to type in 1/8.125. Now I'm prompted enter the center point. So for the first arc I'm going to move on down to the center of this 1/2 inch circle. There's my visual cue that I'm going to snap to the center. I'm going to pick it. Now the next arc, which is down here, we're going to use polar coordinates. So let's move up to the order cursor ribbon bar, and I'm going to click on the relative icon. Now the prompt has changed. Enter a known point. Well, my known point is x0, y0, which is at the center of this arc, and there's my visual cue that I'm going to snap to the center. I'm going to pick this point. Now for the polar coordinates, I'm going to move up into the distance section and input 2.215. I'm going to hit the tab key on my keyboard, and now we're over in the angle section. Now for the angle, I'm going to input 120 plus 40 degrees and then hit enter. There's my circle. Looks great. I'm going to hit apply. Now up on the left here, I'm going to click on the radius icon to deactivate the locking feature. Now the next arc, the next circle that I'm going to create is tangent to this arc, and it's also tangent to this arc. So when prompted for the center point, I'm going to move on down and pick this point, the center of this arc. And what I'm going to do is move over to the left. And as you can see, when I get close to this small arc, there's a visual cue for tangency. I'm going to pick this point. So there's my first circle, looks good. I'm going to hit apply. Again, I'm prompted for the center point. I'm going to pick the center of this circle, which is at x0, y0. I'm going to pick it. Now as I slide over to the left, there's my visual cue for tangency. I'm going to pick it. Looks good. I'm going to hit apply. Again, the prompt, enter the center point. I'm going to pick this point. I'm going to move off to the left. And I also have an arc that's tangent to this circle. So there's my visual cue for tangency. I'm going to pick it. Looks great. Let's pick on apply. Again, enter the center point. I'm going to pick this point, this center point, our x0, y0. And now I'm going to move on out. And there's my visual cue for tangency to this circle. I'm going to pick it. Looks great. Now I'm done here. So over up on the right hand side on the ribbon bar, I'm going to click on OK. Now we've got some more arcs to create. The next arc we're going to create is the arc that's tangent to this circle, and it has a radius of 1.483. So what I'm going to do is move into create arc, and at the very top I'm going to select create circle edge point. Now on the ribbon bar over on the right hand side, I'm going to click on the tangency icon to activate it. I'm going to slide over to the left. Now the radius for this circle, I'm going to click in the white space, is 1.483. Enter. Now I'm prompted, select an entity. I'm going to pick this arc. I'm going to slide over to the left and pick this arc. Now there's a multitude of circles on the screen, but let's check out the prompt. Select the fillet to use. So what I'd like to do is keep this guy. So I'm going to pick on it. Looks great. I'm going to hit OK. Now let's explore another way how we can create this circle. So what I'm going to do is move on up and click undo. This time though, let's go into create fillet and let's check out create fillet entities. Now the first thing I'm going to do on the ribbon bar is input the radius 1.483 and hit enter. I'm prompted select an entity. So as we did before, I'm going to pick this arc. I'm going to slide over to the left. I'm going to pick this arc. Now I'm prompted select the fillet to use, but also just over to the right, just take note the trim is turned on. So select the fillet to use. I'm going to pick this one. Now part of the arc has disappeared. I'd like it to come back, so I haven't hit the apply button yet. So what I'm going to do is just over on the left here, I'm going to click on the icon for no trim. Now it prompts me select the fillet to use, and I'd like this one. This is the one I want to keep. Looks great. I'm going to pick OK. Let's create the two lines. Create line, and right at the very top, create line endpoint. What I'm going to do first of all is create the horizontal line between this arc and this arc. So I'm prompted specify the first endpoint. Well, as I move up to the circle on the left, there's my visual cue that I'm going to snap to the quadrant point. So I'm going to click on it, And as I slide over to the right, there's my visual cue for tangency. I'm going to pick this point. Looks good. I'm going to click on Apply. Now one more line to create. What I'm going to do is click on the icon for horizontal on the ribbon bar. Now for the first point, I'm going to move on down to the circle on the right, and there's my visual cue for quadrant point. I'm going to pick it. I'm going to slide over to the left and just pick a point here. Looks great. Let's pick OK. Now we have one arc to create, a fillet between this line and this arc that has a radius of 0.25. So let's go back into Create, Fillet Entities. First thing that we're going to do is set up the radius, which is 0.25, and I'm going to hit Enter. Now we've got the trim turned on. That's good. So prompted, select an entity. I'm going to pick this arc and this line. Looks good. I'm done here. Let's pick OK. So we got a bit of a mess on the screen. It's time to do some trimming. So let's go into Edit, Trim Break, Trim Break. Now let's review some of the icons on the ribbon bar. Starting on the left hand side, we've got Trim 1, Trim 2 and Trim 3 entities, and just to the right, Divide, and at the very end here, Trim to a point. Well, let's start off and let's pick Trim 3 entities. Now over on the left hand side, what I'd like to do is to trim this circle, and we need to trim it between this arc and this line. So the first prompt, select the first entity. What I'm going to do is pick this line. For the second, I'm going to pick this, and now when prompted, select the entity to trim extend to. Well, what I'm going to do is pick the arc on the left hand side. I'm going to pick the portion that I'd like to keep, and there it is, trimmed. Well, let's explore another way of trimming this arc. So what I'm going to do is move on up and click on Undo, and down on the ribbon bar, let's check out Divide. Now I'm prompted, select the curve to divide. So what I'm going to do is pick the arc here. Well, as you can see, I've still got a bit I need to trim, so I'm going to pick this arc, and that's trimmed. Let's slide over to the right hand side. Now we're still in Divide. I'm going to pick this arc. Looks good. Now we're still in Divide. I'm going to stay here. Let's start over on the left hand side. I'm going to pick this arc. Now it's not completely trimmed, but we'll complete it in a moment. Sliding over to the right, I'm going to pick this arc. Next, I'll pick this guy. Now let's move on over to the right. What I'm going to do is pick this arc. Now moving on up, I'm going to pick this arc. I'm going to pick this one. I'm going to pick this one. Now these arcs that we've got left on the screen, in a moment what I'll do is go into Delete Entities and remove these. Now we've still got a bit of trimming to do though. Let's pick this arc. I'm going to pick it here, and then one more time, bang, it's gone. So what I'm going to do is let's zoom in. I'm just rolling the wheel on my mouse. So we're still in trim. Let's move on down here, and I'm going to trim this arc at the bottom. Now, as I zoom in a bit closer, you can see there's still a little bit there, needs to be trimmed. So I'm going to hit the arc again, and now it's gone. We've also got this to trim, so I'm going to pick on this circle up here. Now let's do a screen fit. I'm done with trimming using Divide, so I'm going to pick OK. Now let's remove these entities. So I'm going to select Delete Entities. I'm going to pick this guy. I'm going to pick this circle. I think we're done here. Let's hit End Selection. Time to do a screen fit, and our geometry is complete. Looks good, a thing of beauty. And that concludes this video. Thanks for watching.